Welcome back to the Death Valley Insider YouTube page. We're joined today by Rivals.com recruiting reporter Matt Moreno, who made the trip, braced the nice weather or braved the nice weather that I wish everyone around the country wanted this last week, and got the chance to go out to the Polynesian Bowl down there in Hawaii. Matt, first off, that's where we want to start. I mean, how nice was that to kind of get away from some of the cold weather that other people are facing around the country?
Yeah, it wasn't exactly roughing it out there. It was an enjoyable time for sure. Stepped off the plane and it was late at night and it was still about 75 degrees. So it was pretty awesome. And got a little bit of rain during the week, but nothing too crazy. And it rained on one of the practices, but it was bright out and there was a bunch of rainbows. And yeah, it was amazing. I mean, it was great weather. When I ended up leaving, it was 80 degrees when I was getting on the plane. And I felt bad when I got back and I was like, oh, this is not, I'm in California, so it's not so bad, but it was definitely cooler than Hawaii. So it was a great time, a great experience. Got to see a lot out there, and yeah, obviously the weather and everything that comes with Honolulu and Hawaii. It was awesome.
So yeah, we got to start there. Talking about the Polynesian Bowl now. Only one LSU commit signee in attendance, and that was Caden Durham, the four-star running back who came into the top 100 recently on the Rivals 250 update on Tuesday. What did you kind of see just from Caden throughout practices? He was fresh off that official visit at LSU, decided that he's going to stay his last semester in high school in Texas, finish out what he started with his fellow classmates. But he decided, I'm going to go to the Polynesian Bowl. It's going to be my only all-star event. What did you kind of see from him in those practices?
Yeah, he was really impressive. I kind of want to start out with just personality wise. I mean, to me, he was one of the bigger personalities of the entire event. Even if you didn't know who he was or kind of where he came from, he really kind of blended in with the Polynesian ideals and kind of everything that comes along with it. He was, asking, Polynesian players have certain things that they do, certain celebrations, and he was asking guys like, "Hey, what does that mean?" or "What is that about?" And then he kind of started doing it. And I think you guys will have a picture. I think I sent you guys a picture of him doing kind of one of them. They kind of do the haka, stick their tongues out, things like that, say different, chants, and he was kind of doing all that. And so it was really cool to kind of see him really embrace all that kind of comes along with the Polynesian Bowl and really kind of ingratiate himself to the culture. And I think that really resonated with a lot of his teammates. And, he was just one of the more kind of boisterous guys. I mean, they had different challenges throughout the week where they were really trying to kind of get the juices flowing and ramp up the energy. And he was right at the forefront of all those things. And the dodgeball game, he was right in the mix and kind of all the fun things. He was really right in the mix. So just seems like a really great personality, a really good guy to, I think, have in the locker room. I think that's something you can kind of take away if you're an LSU fan and figure out, okay, how's he going to fit into the team, not only on the field, but off the field. I think he really showed me, that he's just going to be a great teammate and somebody that I think is going to be someone players, gravitate toward and really want to rally around and be around, inside the locker room. So, and out on the field. So I think that's, one thing to take away. But then on the field, I mean, just, a talented running back. I mean, he really stood out throughout the week. It was a little bit difficult because they didn't put pads on for most of the week. So it was difficult to kind of see someone like that who's a physical runner and is going to want to kind of go towards the contact, see them in kind of the full scope. But once Friday rolled around, I mean, he was really impressive. He was a downhill runner. He was really patient. I think that's one of the things that really stood out was just his patience and ability to kind of let things develop and then hit a hole and go downhill. But I think again, the thing that stood out most was the physicality. It was a big deal. I thought it was something that you really saw kind of throughout the week kind of show itself. But Friday was kind of the physicality and his ability to kind of cut through the defense, not shy away from contact, and really use his size to his advantage. I thought that was really a big thing that stood out to me. And yeah, again, the patience I think was another big thing, another big element of his game is just waiting for things to develop and really making sure he made the most of every carry because they're splitting carries quite a bit. There's a few different running backs, a few talented running backs within that group, and so he really I thought made the most of his opportunities, and I thought that's something that stood out as well.
Talk about that personality. We saw it on the field if you're watching the game on NFL Network. After the touchdown run, we can get to that in a second, doing some of those celebrations as well and getting in with his teammates. He didn't seem like, the most talkative guy in the videos that, David Barry shot for us and Ryan Young, who was also working with you there. But he just seemed like the game meant a lot to him. And they mentioned that on the broadcast. After the game, he was celebrating on the field. One of the guys was most excited about his team winning. What did you just kind of see from him, just the emotion during the game as well? We talked about during the practice, but like, how did he just kind of, bring that motion to the game?
Yeah, I mean, I thought they obviously had to come back in that game, and so it was a little bit difficult at first. There was kind of a somber kind of feeling on that sideline. I was on their team sideline for a bit, and he was one of the guys that was in there. I think rallying guys and trying to get people going and trying to get his teammates going, and trying to, build that comeback that they eventually pulled off. And yeah, I mean, I think a lot of those players on that team, it meant a lot. I think you sensed that, especially when they went down early and, things weren't looking great for them. You could sense that it was more than just kind of, hey, we're here to have a good time in Hawaii. And sometimes, talking to people who have, been there for past games, and this is my first experience at the Polynesian Bowl, but talking to some of the people like Ryan, like you mentioned, and Dave, and some of the other people there that have been to the past bowl games out there, a lot of times it does feel like they're just there for the vacation. They're just there for that opportunity to, take in Hawaii and be part of that experience, and aren't necessarily there to kind of prove themselves. But I didn't get that sense at all from Caden. I didn't get that sense from a lot of players on his team, and I think you saw that play out on the field when they were able to mount that comeback, and he was a part of that and really, made a big statement with that touchdown run and a couple plays on that drive. That was a really big drive for him, that leading to that score. And I think you saw that from him. I think you saw that from the team, especially when they were kind of, on that road to that comeback, because it didn't just mean, hey, we're just here to have fun and, do what we want to do and get the jerseys, get to wear the cool uniforms, be on TV, all that kind of stuff. I think it did really mean a lot to a lot of those players. And again, I thought that was pretty evident.
And after that touchdown run, he was interviewed on the sideline with the NFL Network, and he mentioned, I told the coaching staff, get me the ball, I'm going to score. And you talk about that patience and the physicality that he runs with. I think you saw both of those on that 10-yard touchdown run right there at the end of the game. Kind of let the blockers develop, found his hole, and just bursted right through it and dove into the end zone. I mean, did you see like all of the tools just igniting on that one play?
Yeah, I thought that was a perfect example to kind of end that drive and to kind of showcase what he's about, because it really was. That was kind of the best example of the patience, because he kind of saw it. He could have maybe leaned into some contact there and, maybe just picked up a couple yards, but I thought he let the play develop a little bit more, kind of waited to kind of hit the hole. And when he did, he was able to kind of escape those defenders that would have been in his face and would have been there to make the play. And, really, really stood out, I thought. And yeah, I thought that was a great epitome of kind of what he showed throughout the week. Just with that patience, because somebody else might have leaned into the contact, only gone for a couple yards on that play, but instead he waits, lets it play out, does his thing, and kind of is able to get in the end zone and get some points on the board. So yeah, I thought definitely that was the epitome of kind of what he did throughout the week, but especially earlier on that drive when he had a pretty big run as well.
Talk about the emotion, patience. Durham is the full package there, and he comes in at 93 on the Rivals 250 update that came out on Tuesday. Kind of shifting gears here, mentioned he's the only LSU commit, the only LSU signee that was in attendance for the Polynesian Bowl. Another guy that LSU fans are really interested in hearing more updates about, and that's Texas A&M commit Terry Bussey, who's scheduled to have a visit with the Tigers at the end of the month here in January. It doesn't really feel like it's trending that way right now, that the Tigers will flip his commitment from Texas A&M. I know David and you got the opportunity to talk with him at the Polynesian Bowl. Can you kind of give us an update on where his recruitment kind of stands?
Yeah, I think that Texas A&M is still kind of at the forefront for him. I think he's, been able to kind of build a bond with that staff, and I think he feels pretty comfortable with them. But I think he also realizes, hey, this is an opportunity to really see what's out there and really make sure that's where I want to go. So I think that's why you haven't seen the decommitment. I also think that's why you didn't see him signing, because he still wanted to get to know, some of that new staff. Obviously, Mike Elko coming back from Duke to take over there. But sounds like things are going well with that relationship, and he likes where things are headed. But I think he also wants to make absolutely sure kind of what's going on and where that he's fully, confident in his decision to eventually sign with Texas A&M. So there is kind of room for other teams to make a move. He mentioned Georgia, which has an official visit lined up with him coming up here very shortly. He sounds very interested in them. They've made some staff changes. Dante Williams coming over from USC as their new defensive backs coach seems to really have resonated with him. Seems like they've built a pretty strong relationship already. But LSU is the one that he said he does want to visit as well. He mentioned LSU and then potentially Texas as another visit option before eventually signing. But I think he likes kind of the appeal of LSU. It sounds like there's some confidence in that relationship there and what they stand for. And so I think there is kind of an opening for LSU to make a run. I don't think they're in an amazing position right now. I think there is some work to be done by that staff to really eventually flip him, but it's not done. Things are not done until papers are signed. And so I think there is an opening for LSU to make a run. He did mention them as part of that group that's, still he's keeping in conversations with and still keeping on his radar. Probably have to jump ahead of Georgia at this point, because it sounds like that's definitely the one school that is really piquing his interest outside of Texas A&M at this point. But I don't think the door is completely closed on LSU, and that's kind of the vibe I get. But there is some work to be done, I would say.
You mentioned it, talking about getting familiar with the defensive backs coaches and the cornerbacks coaches wherever, these other schools that are looking at him. Texas A&M, new defensive staff, new staff entirely. LSU the same way, and you mentioned the same thing with Georgia. A lot there for him to, pick the brains of and try to meet these guys. And you mentioned that in your conversations with him and David as well. On the field, though, playing a lot of wide receiver, we know five-star athlete. He played quarterback in high school, could play on the defensive side at the Under Armour All-American game earlier this month. He was on a wide receiver as well. What did you just kind of see from him on the offensive side of the ball?
Yeah, I mean, he was really making plays, and it was interesting because he ended up on defense. Played both ways in the Polynesian Bowl, and actually did some, returned some kicks. He didn't get too many opportunities to do that. The punters and kickers were doing a really good job of getting the ball out of the end zone. But he had the big interception that he almost returned for a touchdown defensively. So he showed everything that you want to see defensively, and it sounds like that's where a lot of schools are looking at him, is particularly on the defensive side of the ball. And just talking with him, that sounds like kind of the direction things are headed. But as you mentioned, All-American Bowl, he worked out an offense most of the week. In Hawaii, he worked out on offense and he looked really good. I mean, there's a different kind of burst that he possesses, and I thought you saw that on the interception run, which is kind of, it turned into an offensive play because he's taking it back and trying to kind of knife through what then became the defense. Working against those offensive players on that interception return. You just saw the vision. I think that was the one thing that stood out, was that he really never even got close to being tackled until he got to the end of that run, and there was a lot of traffic in front of him. So just that speed and that burst really kind of got him by everybody, and I thought you saw that offensively as well. Obviously, for someone who's going both ways and has played different positions, I think the route running probably needs to improve a little bit more. There was times where he was just kind of more relying just on his speed and his ability to kind of get behind defenders, as opposed to just running great routes and running crisp routes. But overall, I mean, he was getting open. He was making plays. The hands are good. He's able to make catches. It's not like that's an issue at all. And obviously, that speed is kind of the weapon that's always in his back pocket. And I think he really utilized that really well throughout the practices. And that's really where you get to kind of see where things are making progress, because it's a little bit different than the game. The game, there's so many limited opportunities. There's only so many things you can do with all these players. But during the week, I thought that's where you really got to see him kind of shine offensively. I think he can do it at the next level. I do think after seeing him throughout the entire 5-6 days, defense is probably where his future is. But I think there'd be no question about him potentially, playing both ways if a coaching staff wants to do that. But I think he can contribute on the offensive side, no problem. And I think he showcased that throughout the week.
Do you think coaches watching, the clips and highlights and all of his film from both all-star events, taking it in, are they kind of seeing this as just an advantage for what he can do on the defensive side of the ball, just showing that he has those improved hands, and also just on special teams, like you mentioned, with punt returns or kick returns? Or do they kind of start to think, maybe we can we can put this guy in the slot and maybe look at him for some offensive packages?
Yeah, I'd have to imagine they see a weapon like that, and obviously it depends on the situation and what the head coach thinks, and what the two coordinators think, and where he's going to be the best fit. Obviously, it's up to him to have the athleticism to do that and potentially play an entire game, and so that can be difficult at times. It's one of those things maybe you don't know until you actually try it. But I think based on what he showed and what he's proven the last month or so, I think there's no doubt that coaches are going to be taking a look at him on the offensive side, and knowing that it's something he wants to do. I'm sure that's going to be part of the pitch as well. There's a lot of guys that are talking about trying to play both ways. Everyone sees Travis Hunter and sees the success he's able to have on both sides of the ball. He's a rare talent, but I think a lot of these players who are thinking about it also feel like they are rare talents as well. And Terry Bussey, I think, is in that category. I mean, like I said, I don't think there's anything that I saw this week that says he can't do it offensively. And so I think coaches, I'm sure they're seeing the same types of things. And it has to be the right situation, I think. But I think a coach shouldn't have any issue, throwing him out there on offense and seeing what he can do, because again, he has so many different elements to his game that you don't see with other players, that I think it's one of those things that you can try it and see how it goes. But I don't think there should be any hesitation to see what happens if he has the ball in his hands, because you see that at moments and you go, that's something special. And I think that's something that any coach can use.
Matt, well, we thank you so much for coming on with us on the Death Valley Insider YouTube page and talking with us about Kaden Durham, just the future of the LSU running back room and him, and possibly Terry Bussey and what he could bring to the Tigers if LSU does get a flip from him. But before you go, I want you to let everyone know where they can find you on social media, just on Rivals.com, and what you've been kind of working on, and kind of tell us what the future of recruiting looks like for you with the Pac-12 no longer being alive.
Yeah, so you can follow me at Matt R. Moreno on Twitter and Matt Moreno Rivals on Instagram. posting updates there all the time. It's obviously a very, very busy time with the transfer portal and recruiting as always. But yeah, you can find me all over many of the Pac-12 sites, or what was the Pac-12 or what is the Pac-12 for about 6 more months or so. But yeah, I cover many of the schools within the conference and recruiting within the conference, and you can find me at any number of those sites. It's going to be very interesting to see how this all pans out. Obviously, their Pac-12 is being broken up and going all over the place. You have a team going to the ACC, you have teams going to the Big 12, the Big 10, obviously, and so a lot of different changes going on, and we'll see what that means for recruiting and how this kind of shapes the next phase of college football, which feels like it is always changing. But yeah, there's definitely going to be an interesting element here as teams start to really gear up, especially this recruiting cycle is the first one where players are really going to be targeted and saying, hey, we are no longer part of this conference, we are part of the ACC or the Big 12 or the Big 10. And so it'll be very interesting to see kind of how that comes into play for a lot of these recruits, knowing that they're not going to be able to pick a school out west and play close to their family for most of the season. They're going to have to do some traveling. So it's a very interesting time in college football, and definitely for the area I cover, it's a absolutely an interesting time to see how it all plays out. But I'm very excited to kind of see what the next phase holds for all these teams.
That's good to know. And if there's any LSU interest with any of the guys you're covering out there, we know we can count on you to get us what we want, what we need to know, especially for the subscribers to the Death Valley Insider. Matt, we thank you again for joining us today. You can follow us at LSU Rivals on social platforms. I've been Kenny Van Doren. That's Matt Moreno. I'll see you next time.